Welcome to the Heart-Centered Hustle podcast. Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Helwig, and I am your host. This podcast has been designed to shine light on how the top mortgage loan originators and influencers in real estate, leadership, and wellness from across the nation have built systems that led them to growth and freedom through meaningful change. In each episode, we will uncover how thought leaders in these industries paved their path to live a life without limitations. As a production, health, and lifestyle coach, I believe in the importance of implementing holistic approaches and developing habits in business and personal life that support and empower success and well-being. Through the theory of bioindividuality, we recognize that everyone has different wants, needs, and desires. By uncovering the things that support individual health and happiness, we have found that when implemented with intention, ultimately lead to success. As an advocate for creating flexibility and freedom in our lives, I am excited to welcome you into this space where we will discover how harnessing the power of a positive mindset and living in true alignment with our purpose will guide us to lead with our hearts and fulfill our greatest desires. Now, let's get started. Enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Heart-Centered Hustle podcast. I am here today with a dear friend, Evan Transue. Evan and I met a couple years ago, and Evan has a couple businesses. He is a youth speaker in the mental health space. He travels all across the United States speaking to different schools. He also podcasts professionally, and he has a light therapy business in Bucks County Light Therapy, and he is also starting a new show called Politics and Personal Development. So I know he'll give us a little bit more background on that later on in the show. I'm going to ask him a few questions to just dive deeper into that. I know really developing a personal brand for yourself and using your voice to share what is important to you is something that's important to Evan. So I am really excited to have him on today, and welcome, Evan.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's cool. Just when we were doing the pre-interview thing, I love people that you can't see for a couple of years, but they're always like growing and changing. And I'm not condemning those people, but some people, you don't see them for 5 years and it's the exact same problems, exact same issues. So it's not a condemnation. I actually feel bad. It's not a good way to live, in my opinion, if you have the same exact issues and complaints and problems as 5 years ago when we only have so many 5-year periods in our life. So It's fun to talk to someone that completely different thing, doing cool things. It's always interesting to catch up.
Yes. Oh my God. So true. And I know the last time, I'll give everyone a little bit of background about how we even met each other. Mm-hmm. We were on a really, really awesome retreat with some of our mutual friends up in the Catskills, which was quite a interesting time. It was freezing cold. I am not good in that climate. I thought I was going to have like hypothermia or something because we were like outside in the snow going ice climbing or something crazy like that. But it was really cool. And I got to really know Evan on that trip. And it was really fun. It was an amazing experience. And one of the things I will never forget about you, Evan, that just like surprised me because I never saw anything like this before, but it was the glasses that you would wear as you are like getting ready for bed, winding down to like, finish your day. And I guess with that memory, I can start asking you some questions about your light therapy business. Mm-hmm. How did you start getting educated on this kind of stuff?
Yeah, obviously there's the whole context of the health journey in general, but that would be way too long-winded of an answer, and I'm sure we'll organically get to that anyway. So bottom line is I started seeking out alternative methods for health, similar to you. I mean, I know that you have your certification and stuff, right? Started seeking out these alternative methods when conventional medicine wasn't working for me. And I have to specify this anytime I talk because it's not like religion or politics, but it's getting close where like it's so dogmatic on either side of functional or conventional medicine. I like both. I think both have tons of application. If I get into a car accident, I am very glad that there is an emergency room, usually within 20 minutes of you, wherever you're at in this country. That's wonderful, right? But there's chronic disease going on that myself, my mom, and tens of millions of other people in this country and world are experiencing that is not really made for the conventional medicine system, because what they do is they look for a diagnostic code and then they treat that. And the only way they're allowed to treat that, in a sense, is through that diagnostic code. So if you start developing symptoms or diseases or whatever it might be, that don't fit that mold, there's nothing they can do, no matter how smart they are, no matter how educated they are. And we need to understand that that system was designed for primarily acute injuries or very serious life-threatening things. If I get a heart attack, Western medicine kicks butt. If I get into that car accident, like I said, Western medicine, it's crazy what they can actually do if you really think about how many things human beings we mess up or put ourselves in these dangerous things, and we can fix people with the craziest of circumstances. So that is good. But when someone's just steadily over time getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and there's no real reason for it, it doesn't seem, at least, or worse yet, the tests that we use to diagnose something in Western medicine come back as quote-unquote normal, that's a problem. So that made me start studying functional medicine, and like most people, I started out with the diet stuff. I think that's the most inherently obvious one. I think if I went down the street and talked to 100 people, and I worded this in this way: hi, do you think food affects mental health or could positively or negatively impact it depending on what I'm eating? Do you think it could do that with cancer or any other physical health issue? I would have to wager that 99, maybe even 100 of those people would say, well, sure. Now, can they explain it? Maybe not. It's not everyone's passion or area of expertise, but they might just naturally understand that that makes sense. But if I go down the street and say, do you think light could affect mental or physical health? Maybe people would say yes because of seasonal affective disorder. But then if I started getting into the cancers or autoimmune disease, I think I would get a lot of blank stares. You know what I mean? I think they'd be pretty confused about why that would be the case. So it started with the food. Then came the functional lab testing, all of this wonderful stuff, really cool things that I'm still involved with to this day. But then when you're in this space, and thank God for the internet in today's world, you have access to alternative information, and you can get that displayed to you when you might not have been displayed that stuff before. And to be clear, I don't mean getting a YouTube education from some person with no citations in their YouTube description. I'm not saying that, guys. But scientists, doctors are on social media too. They're also humans. And so they can bring awareness to scientific literature that you can go verify yourself on PubMed and see if it's legit or not. So that's free for everyone. I don't need to be a PhD. I don't need to go to even college or even high school to know how, or learn how rather, to read a study and then go verify that it's factual. That is something that's available to everyone, and people don't seem to realize that. So the first person that got me involved with this stuff, it's not like we had a relationship, but it was someone that I followed. It was a neurosurgeon, and he had an incredible weight loss journey through cold exposure and changing his light environment. He talked nothing about diet at the time. And I'm like, okay, this is new. This is interesting. So, of course, I start looking into this. And actually, I have my girlfriend's glasses here. These aren't mine, but hers are a little bit different tint. So I started hearing about these glasses from him, these blue light blocking glasses. And for those that are watching the video, they might think, well, those are orange tinted. That's not the blue light glasses I'm used to.
Yeah.
Well, blue light, can be blocked on a spectrum, basically. And so I started with the nighttime ones, and those need to be those deeper oranges, ambers, or reds to actually fully block 100% of the blue light to get good sleep. Now, this is where it started, Jess. So I just started wearing those glasses. I'm like, this should be pretty obvious if this works or not, right? And I felt great the first night. I just easily fell into sleep. I've had people that are so sleep deprived. One of them was my mom. The first time I gave her the glasses, she's downstairs watching TV. And this is not something I'm necessarily recommending. Like, I don't want to be watching TV right before bed personally, but still, even with that, I came down like 5 minutes later, and no joke, she's like nodded off on the couch, like, almost drooling and stuff, because it was that relaxing for her. Wow. Most people have never had this unless they've camped. And even then we use our smartphones when we camp, don't we? Let's be honest. Right? So most people have never had that experience. So really just trying to keep it as short as possible. I know it's still long-winded, but getting into the health stuff made me just completely open my mind to that. Wow, I might not know anything about health. And since I got positive results with diet and functional lab testing and supplementation, I just became open to everything. That doesn't mean I'm going to fall for anything, but I became open to it. And I tried this. I'm like, there's something to it. And I've dedicated many years now to studying light. And there's a lot more than just blocking blue light at night. But I think it's a missing piece of health. I know it's a missing piece of health. It is so underplayed, it's not even funny. And there is decades of research on this that, you can go see for yourself. And I don't know why it's not more publicized. That's as good a guess as anyone else's. But I would have to wager that it's typically free to do these things. And it's not that it's hidden. I'm not getting into crazy conspiracy. I'm just saying that if something's not profitable, who's going to promote it? Why would you? There's nothing to do with it. Okay, this is great and all, but I need to go make money for my pharmaceutical company or something else. So that is how I got into the light.
Wow, that is so cool. So you guys opened this about a year ago, or?
Yeah. The idea started in like, I mean, it was so fast, honestly. It was like September of last year, and then we got moving really quick, my partner and I. We officially opened in March. We were kind of like open underground in the sense for the few months prior, but we needed the insurance, and we could only let like certain friends in and stuff. So yeah, we only actually opened in March of this year, which was a little late because we live in a similar geographic location, right? It's beautiful right now. It's like 80 and sunny here today. It's gorgeous. I don't necessarily think someone should be using our light therapy studio per se on a gorgeous day like this. Although we have people coming in right now, that's great. But I always tell them, get the sun and then really utilize us November through March. So we opened up on the later end of that, which is unfortunate. But I'm very excited to see what this fall holds when people start becoming miserable again and they don't feel good. And then we have those answers for them at the studio.
Yeah, so cool. And you just made me think about when you talked about being outside and getting the sun from, natural light, how that affects your circadian rhythms. And especially when you wake up in the morning, it's best to like get outside and get that natural light and then not pick up your phone right away because that impacts, your entire system. So are you able to talk a little bit about how that actually does impact your circadian rhythm?
Yeah, that was the next step, right? Because it's one thing, it's almost like this. It's like, you stop eating McDonald's when you get into health or something similar, right? So you're not necessarily eating good food, but you stop eating the worst. So when I block blue light at night right before bed, that was almost the McDonald's equivalent where, okay, I'm at least getting rid of the worst. It doesn't mean I'm doing anything good per se. It just means I'm neutralizing bad, if that makes sense. So then I'm like, well, is the sun good? What about the other parts of the light spectrum? What if you isolate certain parts? What would happen then? And then, of course, there's very solid research on this. Yes, we are, believe it or not, guys, human beings made to live out under the sun, that thing that all of this other life on this planet lives under, right? And then we hide ourselves in rooms like this or a business or an office or a school. And we do this our whole lives. And then we wonder why people don't feel so good. So we're supposed to be out in this, especially during those morning times. That's what would set our circadian rhythm and get us going. You actually feel really good with this. And again, there is scientific literature for this. I know it's not going to be the only topic today, but you don't have to really dig that deep to look this up. You can go do it yourself. But the point is, this started changing my life. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. I went from someone who was a super late night out to someone who effortlessly fell asleep early. And by the time we were on that retreat, and listen, it pisses some people off. I get it, but you're very routined as well. So I think you're someone who appreciates it. I fully understand it pisses other people off. When I'm going to bed, I'm going to bed. And you know me, like everyone else is up. I'm done for the night. I'm going upstairs. That's it because I know what it does for my health. And it's effortless now because when you're in alignment with nature's rhythm, you want to fall asleep. If anyone's ever been, I think we had a solar eclipse here a few years ago. What happens? The crickets start chirping instantly. It's almost instant. As soon as that sun's covered, they get tricked. Now, there are animals that are more, obviously we're animals too, but more simple than us, right? So they can't determine, oh, wait a second. No. It's just behind this thing right now, right? Like it's coming back out. We are the only animals that have the ability to just completely override this natural circadian rhythm. We don't start chirping like the crickets as soon as there's any hint of dark, right? But our body does react on a biological level very similarly to the cricket, in so much that things are happening that can only happen when it's dark, things that can only happen when it's light. And so Dr. Jack Kruse, the doctor I learned all this stuff from to begin with, he's a very controversial guy in many ways, so I'm not promoting him or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Having a lack of promoting for him. But he's brilliant. No doubt he's brilliant. And he said human beings are the only animals smart enough to invent artificial light and dumb enough to live under it. And that's what we're doing. We're taking away all the good. We tell people to fear this. Oh, you need to be scared of it. And then we have them sit on these blue light screens all day long. So,
Yeah, it's wild. So that's so interesting. And I can't wait to hear, in 6 months, like how things really start to evolve for you guys as a business. That'll be really awesome to see. And I would love to come see it sometime. You're not too far from me. I would like to now kind of pivot into the mental health space. I know that that's something that's very near and dear to your heart. You're doing so much with it right now. And even over the past couple of years, healing yourself, that has then led you to becoming a national public speaker for children. And I would love for you to share a little bit about that and maybe just start with your mental health journey when you were about 18 and how things have kind of evolved since then.
Sure. So mental health issues for me and all of this stuff. I love your title of your podcast, right? The Heart-Centered Hustle, because I strive to have what this title is be the epitome of my work, right? I love working my butt off. I'm a total workaholic. Many people know that, but I'm not working at the same time, right? I love what I'm doing. I think it's fun. I would choose to do it anyway. And so all of these things relate, whether it's the light therapy, stuff we'll talk about later, or mental health speaking. And this is similar to the light stuff. It started because I had health issues. I started dealing with mental health issues at like 5. It was panic attacks to begin with. Generalized anxiety came later. I never got diagnoses of these other things, but it was pretty obvious looking back that minor OCD, certainly hypochondriasis, were all parts of this story as well. Major depressive disorder. So to be clear, the panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and the major depressive disorder all were diagnosed. The other things were just, I'm not a psychologist, but I'm pretty sure I dealt with those things. It seems kind of obvious, but the bottom line is there's a lot of stuff going on. And to be clear, because it's not just mental health today, and people will wonder this, well, were you abused as a kid? Was something going on? What led to panic attacks? That's the problem. No. And I'm not saying I want that. It's not a problem that I didn't have it, but it was confusing to people in my life, including my family, because why does this kid who doesn't live in some $1 million house, but has an upper middle class family that's doing pretty well, why does he feel this way? And I'm realizing this is happening to millions of people. I think I was just one of those people that was on kind of the first wave of this, where we're very affected by our modern world. So again, it all comes down to the health stuff, but you asked about the speaking. Over those years, it got worse and worse. We did go to doctors in the very beginning, but there was statements made basically along the lines of, this isn't something to worry about. Evan gets himself too worked up. People have to remember, even though you and I are pretty young, 21 years ago when I went into the doctor for the first time, this world looked at mental health radically differently than it's looking at it today. Even 5 years ago, it's different. It's radically different 21 years ago. I don't think many doctors, even if they knew what a panic attack was, were equipped and ready to have a 5-year-old with 2 parents, both coming in for this doctor's appointment, to talk about this stuff. Because the obvious question would be, okay, well, is this kid getting abused? Well, that's kind of hard to believe when 2 parents are coming in clearly concerned about this. You know what I mean? So I don't even think it was on their radar that this could be a panic attack. Now, you know me, I have a good memory. That's kind of my thing. I never forgot that, though. This is where it's to my detriment sometimes. I never forgot that doctor saying that. So you could have a good intellectual capacity at 5, 6 years old to remember this throughout your life, but the emotional capacity is not there. So I didn't have, or the reasoning ability either. I didn't have the reasoning once I got to 10, 11, 12, 13 to realize, oh, maybe just the doctor missed it. I solidified this concept in my mind that there must be something wrong with Evan Transue because the doctor couldn't figure it out. So as I'm getting worse and worse, and I'm being told, or was being told, I would outgrow this, but that's not what's happening in reality, there must be something wrong with me. I use the word crazy. I know that's politically incorrect, but that's what I'm a mental health sufferer who said that about himself. So I don't think it's PC, to be wrong there, or not PC to be saying that there. I thought I was crazy. I believed that. So why would you tell someone you're crazy? That's not something you're going to do. And that was the biggest mistake I ever made, was not talking about this. It got worse and worse. The mental health issues went from, a once a month occurrence to, in 10 years, beyond daily, multiple episodes of things daily. Substance abuse came in the mix. And I was a really straight edge guy. I wanted nothing to do with those things. I wasn't someone who had an interest in alcohol or smoking weed or whatever, else kids do as the first types of things. I literally had no interest in it. It was when depression kicked in, that's when it changed me as a person. Anxiety sucked. I was still Evan Transue. Depression was not Evan Transue. That was a whole different person. And I got into the substance abuse. I started doing some really stupid things. I put myself in some very dangerous situations, dangerous legal situations, and just physical situations. I hurt a lot of people in my life. I treated people terribly. It wasn't good. And that led to, at 18, kind of a breaking point after multiple years of substance abuse, all this stuff that went on, to getting arrested, kicked out of school, and spending my 18th birthday on house arrest and going to juvie, all within like a 3-week period.
Whoa.
And this was a kid at one point, I'm not bragging, I sucked at sports. You didn't want to see me throw a football, dribble, or basketball. That wasn't my thing. But I always make a joke that all the juice from like the athletics went into the brain stuff. This was a guy getting straight A's at one point, recommended for the school district's gifted program that really had an opportunity to do something really cool academically if I put in the work for that, even minimally put in the work for that. And yet here I am, not even making it past 17 days into my senior year of high school. I'm not coming back to the school. There's no option for that. I'm in juvie. Everything's pretty bad. I'm like, whoa. And I can't use the drugs that I rely on now. So now there's a real mess going on. And If I may, can we continue to the?
Yes, absolutely.
Is that cool? Sorry, I'm going off here. So
yeah, no, all good.
Yeah. So what happened after that is I got out of juvie pretty quickly, thankfully. There was a psychiatrist that came in and basically deemed me. There's a whole scale that they use for juveniles for like danger, and I forget what it's called, but it's on a rank of 0 to 30. He ranked me at like a 2, more or less called me an idiot in a funny kind of way, almost like a movie way. Like, I don't think you're dangerous. I think you're an idiot.
Yeah.
And just said, don't do this again. And I'm like, okay. So I got out, but I only learned one coping mechanism for drugs. I actually wish I was in juvie longer looking back, because several days wasn't enough. I still had those same habits. I went right back to the same stuff I always did, even on house arrest. And you say, well, you said you had good parents. What were they doing? Guys, if you want to get drugs, you're going to get drugs. I had people dropping off drugs to the end of my parents' driveway at 3 a.m. because I was that desperate. Like, it wasn't thinking 10 years ahead. I'm thinking 10 minutes ahead. I just wanted to feel better in that moment. And so continue this on house arrest, somehow get away with that. I get off house arrest, I'm on probation. This goes on for another 2.5 months. Now, you are not going to get away with that forever. And then another 2.5 months goes by on probation. I'm still using drugs on and off. It's not every day. I couldn't pull that off, but I used it as much as I could. And I found out ways to just get around it. It was bad. And then, I had a very significant moment, ironically, on New Year's Eve, which kind of led to the speaking. And I knew that was something we were going to talk about today anyway, so perhaps it's a good transition.
Definitely.
Because you asked me in the pre-interview, like, what was the aha moment? Well, the aha moment is basically what led to the speaking. It was New Year's Eve, and my parents, again, great people, they thought I was doing well. I scored very well in the GED. They were very happy with that. I was going into college. I think maybe that's what it was. I think the semester started in like December or something, and I don't it was winter or whatever. And so I'm like starting school, and I think like the first round of grades that came back were pretty good. It was, it's like the 101 classes. It was pretty simple. You just show up, more or less. And so everyone thought I was doing well, but really I had just got a lot better at hiding the drugs. And so I asked my parents if I could be allowed out on New Year's Eve. This wasn't as ridiculous as some people make it seem. They're not stupid. They were trying to reward good behavior. And so their rules were, sure, you can go out, but we are going to drop you off, and then we're going to pick you up at 12 a.m. In their heads, who could be so stupid as to be on drugs if they're going to do that? Well, Evan Transue could be. I could ace the math test, but common sense clearly wasn't so good back then for me. And so I get dropped off. 10 minutes in, I'm drinking and doing drugs. We go to the friend's house, and at 12 a.m., we get picked up like we're supposed to. Who's we? We is myself and my girlfriend, I won't mention her name on this podcast, of about 4 or 5 years at the time. Now, this was the only person I had ever seriously dated. Everyone else had been like, for a week or two. You're young. I was like in 8th grade before that, right? Little cute stuff. This was the first person that was serious. This was the first person I loved. I didn't really tell her that or display that to her, but we were close, man. Like, we were each other's people, and that was, there was so much turbulence, but there was that very unfortunately toxic bond there. And I convinced her to do a lot of the same things I did that night. Now, it's not like she was perfect, but she didn't really have so much experience doing things in the way that I did them. And this girl was, about 105 pounds soaking wet. It was pretty obvious that something was wrong with her. I'm not saying this is a skill you want to have. I'm just saying over 2 years, unfortunately, you kind of do develop an ability to hide these things, even if you're pretty whacked out. So we get into the car. We're 30 seconds into the car ride. And my girlfriend, I laugh now, it wasn't funny. My girlfriend repeats almost a full sentence word for word to my mom and dad. And I'm looking across at her in the car. I'm like, yo, shut up. Like, what are you doing? This is crazy. She's got a story to tell, though, and there's no stopping her now. There is not a hint of fear in her voice. I'm like, oh, my God. I look out the car window, Jess, and I'm thinking to myself, this is it. I'm going to jail. I mean, my parents are fair, but you don't pull that kind of stuff. That was the ultimate insult. Well, I always ask people, whether their parents are alive, maybe they passed, to actually think about the time that their parents were the most mad at them ever. Because that's usually a memory that people can recall.
Oh, yeah.
And then once you get that in your head, I need you to times that by 10. And that's how mad my parents were in this car on New Year's Eve. I'd never seen them like that. They stopped the car in the middle of the road. There's like 3 cars behind us. They turn around and they start yelling at my girlfriend. And I'm pretty confused. And remember, I'm drunk, man. Like, I've got multiple things going on. So I'm very confused about this. And then I start to realize, oh, my parents raised me better, so they don't think I could be so stupid as to be drunk and high in their car on New Year's Eve on probation while actively getting urine tested. I always make a fun little joke to the kids that that's what we call a very special type of stupid that usually gets a little chuckle out of them, right? And it was so stupid it wasn't obvious. They thought it was my girlfriend. So they're yelling at her. But now I'm starting to realize that these people that I love are fighting and yelling, and this is really bad. But no one should even be in this car tonight. This is my fault. I'm the reason we're getting picked up. I'm the reason she's messed up. I'm the reason she's in the car. There's so many factors here that all come back to me. But I was too scared to go to jail. So in the moment, Jess, I didn't say anything. I kept my mouth shut. I hoped for the best. My girlfriend loved me, so she didn't rat me out. Then there was about that 10 to 15 minutes of awkward silence that only angry parents can provide for us as we're driving home. And I'm having some time to think. And I'm thinking, okay, whoa, this is not good. We get home. My girlfriend and I get up to my bedroom, and I have one of two choices. And I explained this to you on the pre-interview. You know, the first choice was the right one. This was the one where I admit to all the things I was thinking in that car. And the things going through my head in that car were, wow, I love this person. I probably should have told her that over the last 4 years. I know the women usually cringe when they hear that. 4 years, you didn't say anything.
Come on.
I know. This is why I was single afterwards, right? Thank you for having my back through these really hard times. Hey, by the way, I kind of noticed you're really the only person who stuck with me through all of this almost unconditionally. No judgment. Unconditional respect and love towards me, even despite this. That counts for something. Thank you for that. And I did want to do that. That's the honest to God truth. But I didn't want to do that more than I wanted to hide what was underneath that. Because even though this was the option, underneath all that stuff was 13 years of issues that made me think I was crazy, that I was confused about, that I did not realize were just mental health issues that were very treatable. I didn't know that. That's true. And so I chose the option that I thought would be easier. And the second option was one I was an expert at that point in my life. It's one where I don't take personal responsibility for anything in my life, and I find the easiest target to blame. And my girlfriend at the time was very easy to do that. She was, again, small girl, introverted, didn't say much back to me. And so I start yelling at her for getting caught that night for the things I convinced her to do. Now, I'm not saying that's right, but it wasn't the worst thing in the world. I'm talking stupid little stuff, right? Like an argument. But as that happened, Jess, I don't know what got flipped in my mind. But it was as if the drunkenness and the guilt and the shame and the disgust in myself that I was feeling over those last 10 minutes in the car, they got projected as anger.
Yeah.
And so I'm yelling more and more. I'm saying nastier and nastier things. And I always like to be very clear about this. Not that any of this is okay, but thank God, even at my worst, I still was not able to get physical with someone that I love. That never happened. I thank God for that, because that matters to me. But this is still not okay. You can't be doing this. And it's easier to show anger a lot of the times than it is shame, right? Now, that doesn't make it okay or right. I'm not saying anyone should be doing that, but maybe we need to check ourselves or even someone that we love in our lives. Is there anger that they're displaying to us, or the anger that we're displaying? Is that actually feelings of shame, sadness, and guilt? But it's easier to show that I'm pissed off. And I had upset her a lot during those 4 years, but this one took the cake. Last memory, basically, I have is her crying for about an hour straight before we went to bed. And I wake up in the morning, and she's already gone. And I'm starting to think, because I'm sober now, thinking clearer.
Right.
And I don't know what did this, but I'm very thankful for it. It was as if this flood of self-awareness came back into me in that morning, where I realized, dude, what's the plan here exactly? Because you are on probation. You already have a couple strikes. You are using hard drugs on probation. You're going to die or you're going to go to jail. Which option are you trying to choose? And I didn't really like either of those. And for some people, this is so confusing if they've never dealt with this stuff. But most of us have dealt with a severe addict or something like that. You're not thinking. I'm not justifying it. I'm explaining it. There is no thought process. You're like, what's the plan? There's no plan. It's how do I feel better? That's the plan. That's the motive. You're always just trying to get to that next thing. So when you're blessed enough to have something for reasons I can't understand that snaps you out of a multiple year lull that you've been in, that is very powerful. Because I didn't like this. I didn't like what I was doing. I've lost my reputation. I don't have a high school diploma. I'm no college, no job lined up. And now I've pushed away the last person who had my back through all of this because I can't admit that I need help. I realized that morning I had pushed this person away permanently. This wasn't going to be fixable. This wasn't like the other fights where someone storms out. This was a fight where, hey, I'm done being treated like this. Fair enough.
Right.
Well, I guess I cared. Yeah. No, please.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think just the topic of taking personal responsibility for yourself and for your life is a really big deal. How did taking personal responsibility for yourself and your behavior make you feel? And then how did that sort of blossom into you just making better decisions for your life?
Right. It's the foundation of everything good in my life.
Yeah.
And people confuse, and so did I, personal responsibility with fault. I did have a lot of things I was at fault for. Using drugs for 2 years straight was my fault. Having mental health issues and chronic physical health issues, that's not Evan Transue's fault. But people get so caught up in the victim narrative. And yes, if you've had those things or worse, by definition, I suppose you are a victim. I'm not denying you of that. I'm not even denying myself of that. But my question to you is, what does that do for you? Who's someone coming to save you? Because no one came to save me, and I had a lot of people that loved me, and no one came to do that. So what you have to realize is that personal responsibility is not diminishing what you've been through or not recognizing it. It's your only ticket out. It's empowering. And so when I realized this, I said, wait a second, this isn't a bad thing. It sucks what's going on. But right now, my path is completely subject to whatever happens to happen next that's unlucky. Maybe the probation officer shows up and urine tests me at a bad time. Maybe I go to jail. Maybe I snap again because I'm completely out of control and I actually do hurt someone in my life and I really go to jail this time, right? So I'm subject to whatever happens that day. That's not a way to live. That's not fun. When you take personal responsibility for the things in your life that really are your responsibility or the things that are your fault, no matter what, taking personal responsibility for it, you are bettering your life. You're not lessening it. And we have lost that in this society. We're pushing a narrative that everyone's a victim, which again, in certain cases and views might actually be true, but it's, oh, there's nothing you can do about this. You're just subject to society. And unless we have like a complete systemic change, you're screwed. I don't buy that for a second. I'm not saying my story is the worst in the world. There's people that have been through 100 times tougher things than me. So let me reference someone like that, right? Nelson Mandela went to jail for what? 20 years in a South African prison and came out and became president of that country. So if you don't want to hear it from me, why don't you hear it from someone like that? And then I'd be pretty surprised, with all due respect to those listening, that you have a worse story than that. Now, is that his fault? No. Was that right? Absolutely not. What a terrible waste of a brilliant person to be in that jail for 20 years. But he came out, took personal responsibility for what he could. And what an ultimate slap you to the system, right? To go wrongfully imprisoned to leading the damn country.
Yeah.
I think that's about as much of a flip as you could get. So personal responsibility is everything. It's literally everything.
Yeah. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. That is exactly right. And we all have a choice every day when we wake up to do, either the right thing or maybe not the right thing. But when we think about creating a beautiful, magical life that we feel really proud of, when we want to feel proud of ourselves for the contributions we make to our families, with our friends, in our careers, things that are just important to us. When you're in a mindset or a season in your life where maybe you're struggling with depression, anxiety, all of the things, all of the different topics that we can discuss in mental health, it can be really hard to move on when you don't have, the support behind you, and taking that responsibility, even if something is not right, and seeking help is really empowering. And, that's not something to be ashamed of, because there are so many people out there that you may or may not even know could be struggling. And I think that is what I admire so much about what you're doing, is that who knows how many kids that you speak to in the audiences. Like, you're looking out and there's hundreds and hundreds of kids. And unfortunately, we hear stories all the time about bullying and drug use and like all of those things in schools, like middle school sometimes even. And you just never know who you might come across or who might hear your story, whose life could be saved because of it.
Yeah. It's the best job in the world. It was very shortly after, I guess, to answer your original question, that personal responsibility moment, the aha moment, whatever we want to call it. that I knew I wanted to go do this. It took years to get into it, but there's no other way to explain it other than just a gut feeling and intuition that that's what I wanted to do. And this is coming from a guy who had such bad social anxiety that even as a heterosexual male, I couldn't even talk to men. I was so nervous all the time. And now I talk to everyone all the time. It's almost hard for people to believe, but that's the truth. So it didn't even make sense. And that's how I knew it was right.
Yeah.
If that's clear, because if you want to go do something that you're terrified of, but you feel so called to it, that's probably correct, because it doesn't really make logical sense why you'd want to do that if you're so afraid. And it's the greatest gift I have ever been given. I have wonderful people in my life. I'm not denying that. My parents are amazing. My girlfriend's amazing. They all know this, and they respect where I'm coming from with this. That is the greatest thing I've ever been given, is the ability to use this story to share with other people. I had a goal at one point just to speak in like one school ever, like my old school. That would have been amazing. At this point, I've spoken to well over 30,000 kids. It's probably even more, and I need to kind of go through that. Wow. And that's just like, wow. Like, how on earth did that happen? And a lot of it's through personal responsibility. And I say a lot because some of it's luck. You always get lucky and unlucky in life. But you know how the phrase goes. I know you believe in this, Jess. The harder you work, the luckier you tend to get. You can create your own luck, so to speak. I do believe that. I'm not saying some people can't be very misfortunate, but who are you going to hire to come speak? The person that's been practicing for 4 years that hasn't made a dime, or the person that is just starting out in that 4 years that has a dream and the passion, but they don't have any practice, right? So it was lucky that I met someone that got me involved with the things that I do, but I was also prepared. That's what I mean by creating your own luck.
Yes, that's true, because whatever you want in your life, you can choose to be the passenger and then just expect things to fall into your lap and experiences to just happen. Maybe that does happen for some people sometimes, but I believe wholeheartedly that you need to put out the energy, the vibes, like whatever it is, the hard work out into the universe. Practice your craft, do the speaking engagements, even when you're super uncomfortable, like just doing what you have to do to get the practice, get the reps, anything to create the life that you want. Because like you said before, no one came to save you. No one's just going to give you, exactly what you want all of the time. Like, you create your own reality. And I think we need to just always remember that, because especially when things are not going well, it's really easy to just throw in the towel and say, screw it. Like, I guess I'm not cut out for this or something. Like, that to me is what I hope and encourage people all of the time to do, is to just keep going, because the most successful people out there kept going, and they heard so many no's. They failed over and over and over again, but amazing things happen when you do stay consistent and you do keep practicing and you do keep believing in yourself, because like you said, you had that desire to speak publicly and share this story, even though you had no experience, but it was on your heart. It terrified you. And I believe that if it was on your heart, you had the desire to do it. It's there for a reason. And sometimes it's really hard, or you just get nervous and the butterflies are there and maybe a little bit anxious. I don't know. I feel a little bit anxious sometimes about things that excite me. You just have to kind of rewrite that story of, I'm excited about this. I'm not necessarily anxious about it, But I think that when you do realize your life is in your hands, taking responsibility, personal responsibility for your life and your choices, it's a really beautiful thing when you are working towards a goal and then it comes to life. It doesn't happen overnight, but it takes time. And I think just being patient with that and taking the time to also understand what's really important to you, and that can also help guide you.
Yeah, and I think that's where we have to check in with ourselves and find something that we love. And I know this is so cliche, but I don't think many people are actually pursuing things that they love. They're pursuing things that they want, which is not necessarily the same. There's a lot of things I want that I don't love, right? Like, who doesn't want to get rich or be famous, I guess, to some degree, right? Doesn't mean you love it. That doesn't mean you love it. And so we have to learn to separate that. So that comes with that self-awareness. But when we find the thing that we love, this is how, in my opinion, this is how you know you found what you love. It shouldn't even matter if the result is guaranteed. I didn't give a crap about that. I loved the idea of being able to share this story with other people to help them so much that it was worth going through multiple years of having literally no results with this and practicing when no one's watching to just even have the chance. That's what love is. And the real luck, because again, luck could be involved, but the ultimate luck is time. And what I mean by that is if you're hearing messages like this or having aha moments or personal responsibility moments at 85, unfortunately, that is by definition unlucky. You have lost your time here, probably statistically speaking, and there might not be a lot of time to figure things out. If you're hearing a message like this under the age of 50, probably even 60, there is so much time left for most of us that if you just put in an hour and a half, 2 hours a day, and more so the older you are, to the craft or thing that you desire, like what would be required of you to be good at that thing or good enough that someone else would pay you to do it. Because when we're talking about living our dream, what do most people actually mean? They want to do a specific thing and get money to do it, right? It has nothing to do with the money per se. I don't care about the money I get paid for speaking. I care that I can do speaking without having to do something else. That's what I want. You know what I mean? And so if the younger you are, the luckier you are. That's the real luck. If you wanted to be an actor, if you wanted to be an engineer, if you wanted to be whatever it could possibly be, and you're willing to put in an hour a day, and more is better, but I'm just saying an hour, you really think that after 10 years, that's not going to come true. And if you're saying, well, 10 years sounds so long, Ev, then I promise you haven't felt what you haven't found what you loved yet. And I mean that with all due respect. Because to me, at 18 years old, if it took 10 years to get one paid speaking gig, if it took 20, that was worth it to me. And I genuinely mean that.
Wow. Yeah, I agree. So what do you think? I know you shared a lot of things, different lessons that you've learned just within these couple of stories that you've shared so far. But what would you say? How have you translated this experience into your life in the sense of like, what was the most profound life lesson that you've learned and implemented?
I think the idea of personal responsibility was it. And again, I hate to repeat that point, but I think that's the answer to your question because I look at everything else from the health stuff to relationships that I have now that I value to being able to do what I'm doing. I don't think if I hadn't ever taken personal responsibility for the things in my life that weren't my fault, and certainly for the things that were my fault, because most of us don't even do that. I didn't. You're done, man. Like nothing. It has to be that because nothing else that I have could have came if I didn't start taking personal responsibility. Because when we do that, we start living intentionally. It empowers us, and that's what can actually get us to goal achievement. Like, you're a goal-setting person. How are you going to get to the goal if you don't take personal responsibility for it? You better be banking on some serious luck there, you know? So I think that's the number one lesson I could take is everything that happens to you in life, no matter how bad it is, feel it. Don't push it off or repress it. I'm not suggesting that at all. But just ask, okay, what can I do better in this situation? How can I make the best of it? I always tell people that they should act like everything happens for a reason, and that's neutral. Even if you're not like a religious, spiritual person that believes that, you don't have to believe it for it to be applicable. I didn't actually believe it when I first did it. Everything happens for a reason. We all hear that. Okay, only two ways that can be. Either it's true and then great. So now you automatically have, maybe it's true for you. You think it's true. Now you have that philosophy and you can take the benefits of it in your life because you're going to act like it happened for a reason. Or you pretend that everything happened for a reason because anything else is insanity. If you do that, you're looking at the best of the situation. You're changing your way of thinking to figure out what is the lesson or best possible thing I could extract from maybe a very crappy situation. Anything else is insanity because why would I needlessly suffer? Why would I not try to take the best situation from everything in life, even if it's super crappy one? You know, I have a friend, Ben Azadi. He's an extremely popular health podcast. It's like millions of downloads. It's called Keto Camp. I highly recommend health people to check it out. And Ben had a story where his father died when Ben was very young from type 2 diabetes. Now, that is a tragic thing. I am sure Ben has shed many tears with that. Ben also used that as the motivation to lose 80 pounds himself, get out of his pre-diabetes thing. I think he actually might have even been diabetic, become a health mogul who is helping tons of people, has hundreds and hundreds of people that have went through his programs. He speaks all over the country and millions have listened to his podcast. That is a crappy situation that he made the absolute best of. That can't be done without personal responsibility. So the answer to your question has to be that lesson, even though I've never necessarily thought about that because I don't think anything else good could have came without it.
Yeah, that's so true. And I don't think it is repetitive. I know that it's just been, you know, a topic that we've been on for a little bit, but I love that you said that and gave that as your answer because that's where your new story sort of started. And that is empowering. It's liberating. And it's also, a reminder to everybody out there that if you are going through some shit, it doesn't need to last. Like you can always change the trajectory of your life when you make the conscious choice to do so. So thank you for sharing that, Evan. So in terms of success and everything that you're doing, from your podcast, your speaking engagements, to your therapy business and your politics and personal development news show that I would love to talk about in a little bit, but what is your definition of success? Like, what is your most audacious dream? Those are two different questions, but those are kind of the things that I'm wondering about you right now.
My favorite definition of success is one that Earl Nightingale said, and he was a radio broadcaster, huge personal development guy back in the mid-1900s. He's passed long ago, but his stuff's still on YouTube, and that just shows how profound what he was saying was. He said, success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. So success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. And the reason I like that definition is because when we just create a target, we create some probably arbitrarily set goal for ourselves, and then only when we hit that will be successful, I think we'll be starkly disappointed once we hit it, because it doesn't feel ever the way that it does. Even with the speaking, as much as I love it, it's not what you think. Once you finally get to do that gig, it's just not what you think. So you have to have another goal then, right? Like, it's almost like it's a target you can't get. That's what I'm trying to say. It's like the horse that has like the carrot in front of it. It just keeps chasing. Maybe it gets a little nibble sometimes, but that's about it.
Yeah.
Whereas success being the progressive realization of a worthy ideal, that means, Jess, and it's not to be a lazy way to be successful. It's true if you actually mean it and are embodying this. That means you can be a success today. I can be a success today. Anyone listening can be a success today. You say, well, how can that possibly be possible, Ev? Well, if that definition is true, then it can be. That means you know where you're going. You're not a ship without a map that has, I'm just going to set sail and go wherever I want. You know where you're going, and you're heading there. You're instantly a success the second that you try to do that. Otherwise, success doesn't make any sense, because again, someone could be 85 years old, they could be progressively realizing a worthy ideal, and they might pass away. I don't want to be crazy or pessimistic, but like, I could get in a car accident today. So am I not a success because I didn't hit the next goal that I wanted? That's idiocy. That's stupid. Instead, I know where I'm going. I know exactly what my goals are right now and what I want for my life, and I will set those as they go. So that is automatically success. Just being someone that's living a directed life, not being the ship without a captain or without a map that's just setting out to sea and hoping that they hit land one day. And then on top of that, hoping that the land's actually decent. That's not a really good way to live. And Jim Rohn said, Jim Rohn's another huge personal development guy who's also passed, but great stuff on YouTube, endless content. He talked about, if someone was building a house, right, and they're just starting to lay bricks without a blueprint, he's like, we'd lock them up for that, man. Like, you say, what are you building? Say, I don't know. I think a house. Like, well, where are the blueprints? Oh, well, I don't have any. You'd lock them up for something like that. We'd call that person crazy, and yet we live our lives that way. We're throwing the bricks down every day. We wake up and we set sail. We don't have a destination. There is no goal. There's no thing to measure progress. And so if you can't measure progress, you cannot be progressively realizing a worthy ideal. And so that's my definition. And that's what all these different areas of my life, even though to an outsider might seemingly be disconnected, they're all progressively realizing a worthy ideal.
I love that. I think I have heard that quote. And when you said that, I thought of Matthew McConaughey's, one of his speeches that he gave at some award show. But he said, he met someone that asked him who his hero was. And it took him a couple days to figure out who it was. Have you heard of this?
I've heard him speak, but I don't know.
Okay.
Offhand.
So just real quick, because this just popped into my head. So
Sure.
He said, something about, my hero is myself in 10 years. And then, 9-10 years in the future, then he gets asked that same question again. He said, oh, it's myself in 9 or 10 years. Like, you're still just trying to get better and better and better and better every single day. And it's like, yes, set those goals, set those milestones. But then when you talk about being progressively better and just growing and personal development and all of that, like, that journey never ends. So when we think about, setting our personal goals or whatever, I know this is like cliche when you think about like the new year starting, like your New Year's resolutions, like why not come up with some new things that you've never done before, or challenging yourself to like reach a new level in your business, or, whatever it is that you're doing, because if you have that burning desire inside of you to continue to challenge yourself, to continue to learn, and, maybe you'll get knocked down a couple times, but like the beauty is getting back up again and starting over, or just starting where you left off. And I just love what he said, my hero is me in 10 years. And then, you're not settling for wherever you are at that time. Like you're already 10 steps ahead thinking like, who can I be in the next 10 years? And just continuing to evolve in that way. I just always thought that story and that message, that speech was inspiring to me, because, you do want to live in the present and, take everything in and not be too focused on the future, but you still have to plan. You still have to, dream and set your goals. And, I love everything that you just said about that. And, success for everyone looks so much different, but that's a very interesting way to think about it.
Yeah. There's, I don't even know who said it, but it's probably been said many times, that you want to live as if you'll die tomorrow, but plan as if you'll live forever.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be too extreme on either of those ends, but that's how I try to live, right? I did things yesterday that are going to set up my future as if this world is going to get back on track. And I hope that it does, because it's pretty crazy and scary times for many people. But at the same time, my girlfriend and I also spontaneously went to our favorite little tea house last night. It's 15 minutes away. Beautiful night. We love playing games. We're competitive as hell. Like, actually gets like too intense, but we love it. So it's funny.
Wait, did you like solitaire?
No, we haven't done the double solitaire yet. That's funny. Yeah, Jess and I played that for like a million hours at the retreat. We've got a new one recently. It's called Abalone, so we've been kicking each other's butts in that. Jenga, Connect 4, Scrabble, anything we can make competitive.
Fun.
So, but that's probably one of the things I would have done if I know I'm going to die tomorrow. I would have loved to just hang out with her and have one more time doing that, right? So yesterday, it's more like mixing those two things together. I set things up in the early and middle of the day that are affecting my future, but then I also remember to be human enough that, okay, at the end of the day, that's all great if I hit that stuff and I achieve that stuff, but some of the best things and times in life are just sitting in a tea house that you like, playing a board game with someone you care about,
Aw, I love that. So what would you say at this stage of the game, with everything that you're doing, what is one goal that you have set for yourself for the future?
I want to be, and I mean this not so generally, but part of the solution and not the problem. And that's why I started this show by, actually, when this comes out, it would have been like literally the day right after, more or less, the show started. And it's called the Politics and Personal Development Show with Evan Transue. I honestly, and I don't mean this negatively, I don't even like want to do it in a sense. It's not the same desire that I've had with other things. It's a necessity, because I realize with all these things that I want to do, and I have these little cousins that I love, that it'd be cool to see them live these wonderful lives. There's so much stuff going on in this world, and especially this country. I think all of us, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, are painfully aware of the idea that this country might not look like how it does now in the next few years if we keep going the way that we're going. And this is not a political statement for any president or whatever. This is the way that we're thinking as humans. We could have dealt with any of the last few presidents, just so you know, guys, if we were all just being reasonable with each other and respectful. But no one wants to do that. So you could put the best president in the world in next time, and we're still going to be screwed, because it's us. It's our collective consciousness that's ruining this more than anything.
Yeah.
And so I'm one person, but I'm also a huge believer that one person can have a huge impact. And so this show is meant to help have conversations with people from all sides. It's meant to also bring in a personal development aspect, because forget the politics. If we don't work on ourselves, we're really screwed, because we make up the world that we complain about. Even myself right now, saying there's something wrong with the collective consciousness, in some way or another, I'm a part of that. So I need to be conscious enough to be a positive part of that by putting good things out, being respectful to people, listening to all sides. And if we don't do that, it's doomed. So my next goal, when I say to be a part of the solution rather than the problem, is to do that to the point that is necessary. Now, I always want to be part of the solution, to be clear, but it's like right now, if we don't all step up as leaders and do this, even if I only impact a few people with this show, all right, at least I was being a positive influence. And then hopefully there's millions of other people out there doing the same thing, like with what you're doing or what my friend is doing, whatever it might be, because we gotta there's going to be a real rude awakening for a lot of us, I think, if we don't get this on track. So that's my number one goal. I don't want to set a specific goal in the sense of like, oh, I want 10 million subscribers on the show. That has nothing to do with it. I want as many subscribers or views as is needed to be a part of a contribution that actually solves this problem. Whether that's 100 and that's my role in this world, or 100 million, I'll take either. It'd be a little cooler to take 100 million, right? That'd be fine. But I just want to do what I need to do to actually help support this.
Oh my God. I have chills right now. When we talked about this before, I was just kind of amazed, because it takes a lot of courage, I think, in this day and age, unfortunately, to even speak publicly, even sometimes with your friends or family. It is such a topic that is avoided with so many people. And the only way change is going to happen is if we can sit across the table from one another, our kitchen tables, or, in Washington, D.C., to get things done, to create positive change that helps our collective society and our world. I mean, we're living in the most powerful country in the world, and we have a huge role to play here. And when I think about this story and your intention with this new show, is this going to be a Facebook Live? Is this going to be a podcast? How is this going to be set up?
I'm dedicating all my extra time to this. I will still be involved in all my other things, but it's you won't even hear about that as much, because this to me is the main focus. So it's the foundation is a radio show. I do radio broadcasting right now for mental health stuff. And so it's in the greater Philadelphia area. Honestly, it probably reaches you where you're at in Delco. And so people can actually hear the politics side on the radio. But then there's additional episodes that are podcast only. I don't have the airtime or willingness, because airtime is so much more stressful and less flexible. I want to put the politics on there so people can actually hear these people, but the personal development stuff is optional for those that want to come on and get that additional content. But all of it will be streamed on Facebook, Evan_Transue on Instagram, YouTube. I'm really blasting this one out, because again, it's almost like nothing else really matters right now unless we do this.
Yeah. And I know I said this to you when we talked about it before, but because this is it is a very controversial topic, no matter what side you're on, having the courage to have the conversation and putting yourself out there to be a little bit vulnerable is extremely admirable. So what are your thoughts around, I know this show is not about pleasing anyone. I know you're not on one side or the other. This is just healthy conversation. So when you think about the culture that you're trying to create through this platform and through these conversations, what was your initial thought, or did you have any reservations initially when you were thinking about doing this? Because people can get so amped up, fired up about these topics. I mean, people do this with all topics, not just politics nowadays. So people are going to be criticized for saying who knows what now. But when you think about what you are doing here, that could inevitably happen, and having backlash. So what is your intention then with this, and how do you go about that?
You're 100% right. And this is what I mean when I say I don't actually want to do this. It's a necessity thing. This is going to be terrible. I am public with the worst parts of my life. Now, if I ever ran, I suppose that's to my advantage, because what are you going to dig up that I haven't already shared? I literally share every mistake I've ever made, drugs, being verbally abusive to people that I've loved. What are you going to do? You're not going to do that, but having it constantly brought up, bombarded, you know what I mean? People are going to twist that and make it worse than it is, or they're going to make claims. And especially, again, if it gets big, it is what it is. So I know that's going to be par for the course. I want an approach where we're thinking as critically as possible. And if I may, I'm not taking a stance on what I'm about to say, but I want to give an example of something that, like the Roe v. Wade thing that just happened, okay? I'm not taking a stance one way or the other. This has nothing to do with it. But we are having one side that's yelling at the other, saying you're killing babies, and another side that's saying you're taking away women's rights. How simple-minded does someone have to be? I'm talking about both sides right now, to think that all of those people's perspective is I'm killing babies or I'm taking away women's rights. Like, this is the problem to me. This is the stuff I want to talk about. You actually believe that's what the other person is thinking. And my point is, when we say it like that, you're like, well, obviously not. Well, if it's so obvious, why is each side shouting that at the other one? Because when you do that, it's offensive. Right? It's like 35% of women are pro-life. When you say that, first of all, you sound like an idiot, right? And then there's people that have terrible situations, and that's why they chose to get an abortion. Okay. Now, I know that's statistically a minority. I understand that, but it's still millions of people that go through these terrible situations. If you don't even try to understand where this person's perspective is coming from, and you oversimplify it in the way that these sides do, how are we supposed to make change either way? And let's just say this, if you had a hidden agenda, let's say pro-life, pro-choice, whatever it is, wouldn't it be smarter to at least hear the other side so that you have a sliver of a chance to convince them to think differently if that's what you want to do, rather than just condemn them? Does that work well with most people? Does it work with kids, adults, anyone, when you just start calling them names and terrible things and then you say change to my side? That works very well historically. So, and you know what sucks, Jess? This is the problem. You would think and hope what I just said is a reasonable enough statement, but in today's world, it's gotten so extreme, it's not even enough to be neutral anymore. What I just said got someone pissed off. It got them to hate me, even though they like the rest of the podcast, maybe, simply because I'm neutral on that topic right now. That is the stuff I can't stand. And those are the types of conversations that we're having on the show. Let's think deeper about these things. Let's try to understand where this person's coming from, and let's try to make something that's logically consistent, because there's so much dogma in the political space, it's not even funny. I should not know your stances on abortion based on your stances on gun rights. How does that make any sense? How can I know what your stances on gun rights are based on your foreign policy? That doesn't even kind of make sense. I shouldn't be able to guess those things. We're falling for dogma, and we need to think critically. Yeah, I'm starting a show here right now. You're getting me on an episode because I'm fired up, man.
There's a lot of passion there, Evan. But I think, what I took from all of that is it makes no sense to just generalize and say, you're in this bucket and you're in this bucket. Because you know what? There's a lot of people that are sprinkled in here and a little bit over here. But all the time when we hear, especially, in the last week, exactly what you just said, people making these statements, people making these assumptions about another group of people that may or may not be true. Some people do truly feel a certain way, fine. But I don't think when we're having productive conversations, I can't say, oh, Evan, you think like this because of X, Y, and Z. Like, who am I to say something like that? If I didn't know you, what gives me the right to even have that judgment or opinion or make an accusation about you and, maybe the type of person you are, because you may or may not believe a certain thing that I might not agree with, or, whatever. Like, I just think when you make assumptions about people, the 4 agreements, I love that book. Like, one of them is don't make assumptions. Like, in any relationship, in any conversation with any topic, like, that's not going to get you anywhere. And people get defensive, and then that doesn't feel good. And then they're going to get reactive, and nobody likes that. And that's not how you have productive conversations that are going to change our world.
Well, and you nailed it with the assumptions thing, because what each side does is take an overly simplified narrative that anyone would agree with. They sprinkle their version of logic, whatever's going to work best for their political side, onto it to affirm that very obvious and universally agreed upon statement, universally as in 95+%, to create this division. And they're winning. They're doing a great job, because it's still how people don't see this after the last 8 years is beyond me. I'm talking both presidents. They don't see the tactics with this with both presidents. How they don't see it's beyond me, but they don't. And it keeps working over and over and over again. And the Roe v. Wade is just one more example of the many ways that they're able to trick people into this stuff. And it's unbelievable how consistently it can work.
Oh my God. Yeah. No doubt. No doubt. I think we all need something refreshing. We all need something new. We all need a different way to go about having these conversations. This is an incredible form of leadership that you are taking to really create this space to have these awesome conversations. So I'm really excited to finally hear some of those. So you said on the 4th of July is your first release?
Yeah, it was kind of coincidence. It was kind of funny because my release is for the politics. My show is Monday at 4:30 for the radio, and Monday happens to fall on July 4th this year. So I was like, this is close enough to starting. I'm like, let's make the first episode July 4th. Now, of course, people are going to be doing a million other things and listening to my show, so I'm going to like restream it on Tuesday or whatever, July 5th and stuff. But the point is, it's just symbolic. I think it's cool because it's about getting America back. Now, people will argue you can't even say that, right? Because in 1776, there was many terrible things going on in America, including slavery and stuff. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a country that was created that the same country that allowed slavery also had in its constitution for that to be banned. And for a U.S. president to stop that, Abraham Lincoln, right? I'm not saying he's the only person. I'm just saying a main person involved in that kind of stuff. So remember, the same thing you hate is the same thing that solved those bad issues, which I'm very much for. I'm glad that it was able to do that. So the foundation, as flawed as the people were around it creating it, I think was damn solid. And that's why I do believe in that foundation. I don't think that should be a political side. That's not meant to take a side one way or the other. I think that's a solid foundation regardless. So yeah, I'm excited for it.
Awesome, Evan. Well, I am so excited. Do you know, is this going to be a solo episode, number one? Or are you going to have someone on?
No, first episode's a solo episode. The first interview, I'm figuring some things out, but I might just have to start with a libertarian, because if I start with a Republican or Democrat, the other side's just going to yell at me. So I'm like, all right, cool. I'll throw on someone from the damn Green Party on first. That's who we're going to do for you guys, right? Just so everyone calms down. But yeah, I'm going to be bringing on both sides. I am going to do my best to not bring on extremists from either sides, right? But, everyone... There's a good chunk of people that are pretty far from center on either side nowadays. And so long as it's not legitimately bigoted, racist, whatever, or tyrannical, I will bring you on and listen to this. I'm more concerned about the professionalism of the person and their ability to argue the policy as opposed to tell me why the other side's bad the whole time. This radio show is not going to be a Democrat or Republican coming on complaining about Democrats or Republicans or Democrats respectively the entire time. I won't tolerate it. I want to know why your policy and the things you believe in is good. And that first show will be solo, just to honor the guests that I'm going to have on, because I know it's not going to get a lot of traffic. It's more just a fun thing. Yeah. But yeah, starting that following week, we will have the first guest on, and I believe I know whose recording I'm putting there, and it is a libertarian.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, Evan, I cannot wait to hear it. And do you mind, I know we're going to start to wrap up in a little bit, but would love for you to share how people can reach you, get in contact, where they can find you on social media, and even just give us some information about how they can listen to your new show.
Thank you, Jess. Yeah. So a lot of big changes recently. EvanTransue.com is still my website. It's advertised as a youth mental health speaker website. That will change because thankfully I can still do that without advertising for it. So that's going to switch to the politics thing, but there is a contact form there. So if you ever want to get in contact, if you're a political candidate of any side and want to come on and talk on the show, I'd love to consider having you on. So that's just EvanTransue.com, Facebook.com/Evan.Transue. It is my personal page. I'm pretty inclined to add just about anyone as of now, right before the friends max out, just because I think that's cooler than the Facebook page itself. That's just what I prefer to do. Evan_Transue on Instagram. There's a lot more effort that's about to be put into the Instagram page. YouTube is Evan Transue, which again, I'm kind of rewriting all of this stuff, so that's going to be all new videos on there. And then LinkedIn, I don't even know how they do that, but just search for Evan Transue. I think I'm the only Evan Transue on LinkedIn.
Awesome, Evan. Thank you so much. I will include all of your contact info in the show notes. And then one last question. I do love to end on this, but who inspires you?
This is always tough for me. I think about this one all the time. I never want to give like a cheesy thing, you know what I mean? And I also don't want it to seem, well, no, I'll give my initial answer. There's a group one, which is my friends, and that's the people I got involved with in the personal development thing. There is no one that motivates me or inspires me more than anyone else in that thing. It's incredible what all of them have done. And I mean what I'm about to say in very similar to that Matthew McConaughey way. This is not some narcissistic, arrogant thing. I really do. I get inspiration from myself and the things that I've been through and been able to persevere. And I prefer that because it doesn't lead to comparison towards other people. It is great to be inspired by someone else. I try to do that as my job, right? But I think one of the healthiest forms of inspiration is being proud of myself for the things that I've done and pushing myself to my potential, because it's cool to see what others have done. I read books about that all the time, but if you get too focused in on that, it leads to comparison, and comparison's the thief of joy. I want to know what I've done. I want to know where I can go. And when I look back on my life one day, assuming I get the opportunity to actually reflect before I pass here, I want to say that I was in competition with myself and I did the best that I could do, which is going to be dramatically different than someone else could do. I do not have a chance at the NFL. I never had a chance in the NBA. That wasn't happening for me, right? I want to know that Evan Transue, with the things he was given and the circumstances he was put in, once he got new information about personal responsibility, did the best that he could. So in the most humble way possible, and I mean that, I would say myself is where I drive my most inspiration from.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much, Evan. I loved having you on, loved reconnecting, and I cannot wait to see what the future has in store for you.
Likewise, Jess, thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Evan. Thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Heart-Centered Hustle podcast. As always, I've been your host, Jessica Hellwig. Don't forget to visit us on Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or Spotify, and check out my YouTube page. If you're a real estate agent or a loan officer and are looking for a change of pace or looking to grow your business, reach out to me at jhellwig@annie-mac.com. That is JHELWIG at Annie, ANNIE-MAC.com, or shoot me a text at 610-301-9706. And you can also find my contact info in the show notes below. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week.